slide, notice I taped off my serials. Basically, you got your extractor right here, little claw. You see it's red when it's sticking out, flooded chamber indicator. I'm not going to comment on its effectiveness though. And in the back, we have a firing pin. Here's the breech block. There's a firing pin disconnect. If this is not depressed, I don't think the gun will fire. So if the gun's out of battery, you won't strike the firing pin. Or the firing pin won't strike the primer, rather. So these two holes right here correspond with roll pins, and this roll pin here secures the extractor, and that roll pin secures the firing pin assembly. So I'm going to get on the extractor one now. Need some punches for this, and I use a little block of wood because that's not going to absorb the impact very well. So I'm going to rest this on here, and I'm going to drift this roll pin out with my little set of proto punches. They're nice. I'm going to use a slightly smaller size punch for this because the inside diameter of this hole is pretty much equal to what my normal punch sizes are. So I'm going to go undersized on this one. Not recommended though. So if you look, very simple. You got a roll pin punch. Has a little tit on it. Kind of hard to see in this lighting, but it's there, and that prevents the pin from slipping out of the roll pin. So you do this, punch this right on through. It's almost completely through now, and you can see the roll pin. Just going to give it one last whack. And now our roll pin's out. And now our punch can come back out. What we're going to do, you can see the extractor's already starting to stick out. I'm going to put thumb over that. Take my roll pin back out. Punch. Extractor. Comes out. And there goes the extractor spring. Inside the extractor spring, it's kind of hard to see in this lighting again, but there is a little plastic bushing in there. We're going to leave it in there for now. There's no reason to take it out. And so this comes out, and here's our extractor. And you can see in the extractor, right here, this is the groove that catches the case, and that groove right there is what sits against the extractor spring, and obviously your roll pin goes through that hole. Now when you fire these guns, you get a shitload of buildup right in here of carbon, because it's an area you seldom clean, and especially in the slide itself, in that groove, there'll be a shit ton of carbon in here. So when you take it apart, good area to clean. Not critical, but if you're going to have it apart and clean it, then you might as well do it. Moving right along, we have this roll pin now, and that holds in all of this shit here. So I'm going to punch this one out now. Okay, now that one's out. Here's the other roll pin. I like to keep these separate so I don't mix them up, although they are pretty much the same. So I'm going to put the firing pin assembly roll pin on the left side of my tray, and my extractor stuff all right next to each other, so I don't get them mixed. It's not critical, but it helps to be organized. And now our firing pin can essentially come out once we depress this disconnect that holds it in place. So I'm going to press that, and there it goes, starts to fall out. I'm just going to kind of pull out the disconnect now. The disconnect has a little funky cutout in it. You can see the little shape, kind of weird. And basically, this groove right here that you're looking at in the center, that is where the firing pin channel is. And then on the top, that little shape right there is what sits inside the bottom half of the slide by the breech block and disconnects the firing pin assembly. I'll show you that in detail when we put it back together. Behind this thing, there was a spring. You can see the hollow where the spring goes. I'm going to flip it over so the spring falls in my hand. There's the spring. Lighting is terrible. I'm sorry. Just a spring. I'm going to put those together so I don't mix them up. Here's your ejector. Here's your spring. Sits inside like that, and it's compressed inside the hole in the breech block. So our firing pin now will pretty much come out. But before we come out, I'm going to try and pull it out at an angle so I can extract the spring that goes in there with it. Here's the spring, and here's the firing pin. Just spring, firing pin. Here in the firing pin you could see that groove and that slot there. All that stuff right here corresponds with that disconnect that we just took out. That's what makes the pistol not fire when it's out of battery. So, firing pin stuff, yeah. Slide now is, for all intents and purposes, stripped. I'm not taking my sights out. There's no freaking reason to do that. So, looking inside here, you can see the firing pin hole, and you can see the groove of the firing pin hole. You're going to want to clean that channel out because it's somewhere you seldom clean, and your breech face and everything else. So our slide now is completely disassembled, and we're going to move on to the frame.